It was a quiet night in the small town of Ridgewood. The stars above were still. The wind whispered gently through the trees. Nothing seemed out of place, until the sky tore open with a flash of fire. A streak of burning light cut through the night sky. At first, it looked like a shooting star, but it moved too fast, too low. It wasn't falling, it was crashing. Jake Miller sat alone in his old cabin at the edge of the forest. A fire burned in the fireplace. His dog, Bear, lay curled at his feet. Jake had lived alone for 5 years, ever since the accident. Ever since he lost his wife and daughter in a car crash. He had left the army to raise a family, and then fate took that family away. Since then, he kept to himself. No neighbors, no visitors, only silence. But tonight, the silence was broken. A deep rumble shook the ground. Windows trembled. Bear jumped up and barked. Jake stood and stepped outside. His sharp eyes scanned the forest. In the distance, past the hills, he saw smoke rising, and a faint orange glow pulsing in the sky. Something had fallen, and it wasn't a meteor. Without thinking, Jake grabbed his coat and flashlight. Bear followed close. The forest was thick and dark, but Jake moved like a man who had walked these paths many times. Branches cracked underfoot. Leaves rustled. The smell of burnt metal grew stronger with each step. After 20 minutes of walking, he saw it. A large crater was carved into the earth. Steam hissed from the edges. In the center lay a silver pod, smooth and round like a teardrop. Parts of it were glowing faint blue. It didn't look damaged, just buried in the dirt. Jake approached slowly. Bear growled low. The pod hissed. A crack formed along its side. Then it opened. Inside, curled up and motionless, was a small figure. A child, at least. That's what Jake thought at first. She was small, thin. Her skin was pale blue. Her hair was silver, hanging like threads of light. Her clothes were torn. Her arms were bruised. Her eyes were shut tight. But her chest was rising. She was alive. Jake didn't know what he was looking at, but he knew one thing. She needed help. He stepped closer. As he did, her eyes opened slightly. They were a glowing shade of violet. She looked at him, afraid, confused, weak. Then something strange happened. A faint symbol lit up on her chest, a soft white glow, like a tattoo made of starlight. And when she looked at Jake, the light grew brighter, as if it recognized him. Jake knelt beside her. He didn't ask questions. He didn't care where she came from. He just knew she couldn't stay here. He picked her up gently. She was light, too light, like holding feathers. He carried her through the woods, back to his cabin. The wind howled behind them. Something deep in the forest echoed like a low growl. But Jake didn't stop. Back home, he laid her on the couch. He wrapped her in blankets. Her breathing was shallow, her skin cold to the touch. He started a fire, warmed water, cleaned her cuts. He didn't speak. He just worked. After a while, her eyes opened again. She looked around the room, then at Jake. She didn't speak his language, but she didn't need to. There was something in her eyes, something familiar, something broken. Jake sat beside her. "You're safe now," he said softly. She blinked. Her lips trembled. Then she closed her eyes again. Outside, the wind carried whispers through the trees. The forest held its breath. Something had come from the stars, and it had landed in the arms of a man who had already lost everything. As the night grew darker, questions filled the air. Who was she? Why was she alone? Where did she come from? And why had that glowing symbol reacted to Jake? He didn't have answers. Not yet. But deep inside, something told him this was no accident. The stars had sent her for a reason, and that reason was just beginning to reveal itself. The sun rose slowly over Ridgewood, inside the small wooden cabin. The alien girl opened her eyes. She was still weak, but her breathing was calm. Her body was warm under the soft blanket. A faint smell of wood smoke and fresh bread filled the air. She sat up slowly and looked around. There were photos on the wall. A man in uniform, a woman with kind eyes, a little girl with a bright smile, all frozen in time. She didn't understand the words written below them, but she understood sadness. She could feel it in the air. This place was peaceful, but also lonely. Jake stood at the stove, flipping eggs in a pan. When he saw her awake, he gave a small smile. "Morning," he said in a calm voice. She stared at him. No reply. He handed her a plate. She sniffed the food carefully, then picked it up and ate it with her fingers. One bite, two, then faster. She was starving. Jake laughed softly. "Easy there," he said. "You're not in space anymore, of course." She didn't understand, but she looked at him and tilted her head, curious, watching. He pointed to himself. Jake then pointed at her. She blinked, said nothing. He tried again. "You, what's your name?" Silence. Jake thought for a moment, then smiled again. "All right, Nova? I'll call you Nova." She looked at him, then repeated softly, "No." Jake nodded. "That's right, Nova." From that moment, her new life began. She stayed with Jake in the cabin. At first, she was quiet. She watched everything. She listened. She learned without speaking. She followed him around the house. She watched him cook. She watched him fix the old truck. She even watched cartoons on his dusty old television. At first, she didn't understand them, but soon, she began to laugh at the silly faces and funny voices. Days passed. Jake set up a small chalkboard. He wrote letters. She copied them, slowly at first, but her memory was sharp. She remembered everything. After a week, she spoke her first full sentence in English. "Thank you, Jake." Jake froze when he heard it. His eyes softened. "You're welcome, kiddo," he whispered. Nova smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. Her eyes still glowed faintly in the dark, but they looked softer now, less afraid. One evening, as rain fell outside, Jake gave her an old sweater that once belonged to his daughter. It was a little big, but Nova wrapped herself in it like armor. "You look just like her," he said quietly. Nova looked at the photo on the wall. The little girl with the same sweater. She reached out and touched it gently. Jake didn't cry, but his voice cracked when he spoke again. "I lost her 5 years ago, and her mom too. I stopped living that day, until you showed up. I don't know what brought you here, but thank you." Nova looked at him, then reached out and held his hand. "I stay here," she said. Jake nodded slowly. "Yes, you stay as long as you want." But not everything was peaceful. At night, Nova had nightmares. She screamed in her sleep. Strange words, unknown sounds. Sometimes her body glowed with blue light. Jake would wake her and calm her down. She never told him what she saw, but her memories were coming back. A tall woman with golden eyes, a ship burning in space, voices shouting her name, and a symbol, a white symbol, glowing just like the one on her chest. A symbol of royalty. Nova didn't understand it all, but something deep inside her was waking up. One day, Jake was out in the forest, chopping wood. Nova sat alone in the cabin. She was cleaning when she found the metal shard Jake had saved from the crash. The only piece of the pot he didn't throw away. It was smooth and silver. When she touched it, the symbol on her chest began to glow. The shard responded. A beam of light shot from it, forming a small floating image. A hologram dot. It showed a tall alien woman, dressed in silver and gold. She looked powerful, but her eyes were kind. She spoke in a strange language, but Nova understood. "My daughter, if you are seeing this, it means you survived. I pray the stars protected you. You carry our blood, our legacy. You are not just a child. You are the last princess of Lysera." The image vanished. Nova dropped the shard. Her heart pounded. Her hands shook. She wasn't just an alien. She was royalty, a princess of a lost world, and someone had tried to erase her. When Jake came back, he saw the fear in her eyes. "Nova, what's wrong?" She looked at him. Tears welled up in her glowing eyes. "I remember." Jake sat beside her. "What do you remember?" Nova opened her mouth, then stopped. She didn't want to tell him everything. Not yet, but she hugged him tightly. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You saved me." Jake held her close. "So did you, kid?" "So did you outside." The wind picked up. Far above Earth, a small satellite adjusted its position. A red light blinked, a signal sent across the stars. Someone had found her trail, and they were coming. 2 years passed. Nova had grown. She looked 16 now. Her pale blue skin had softened to a gentle silver tone. Her violet eyes still glowed, but her face had changed. She smiled more, laughed more. She spoke fluent English. She wore jeans and boots. She loved chocolate and old Earth music. Jake said she was becoming more human every day, but deep inside, she knew she wasn't. Some things never changed, like the dreams. Every night, she saw flashes. A royal hall, tall windows showing twin moons, a woman standing beside a throne. Her face was warm but sad. There was always a war in the background, fire in the skies, screams. Then the dream always ended the same way. A silver ship, her pod, and darkness. Nova didn't talk about the dreams. She didn't tell Jake about the hologram from the shard. She didn't want to worry him. This was her home now. Her life. Her father, in every way that mattered, was Jake. She couldn't lose that. But her past wasn't finished with her. One afternoon, Nova walked into town with Jake. It was the first time she had gone with him in months. Ridgewood was quiet and peaceful. The people didn't ask many questions. They knew Jake had adopted a girl years ago. They just thought she was different. Some said she had a rare skin condition. Others just thought she was shy. Nobody asked too much. Jake liked it that way. Stopped at the hardware store. While Jake chatted with the clerk, Nova looked around. Her eyes caught a small news screen mounted on the wall. It showed a satellite image of Earth. There was a red circle over the Pacific Ocean, unidentified object in low orbit. The caption read, "NASA says no immediate threat." Nova felt a cold rush run through her body. She stepped closer to the screen. The image zoomed in. A small black shape hovered just beyond the edge of Earth's atmosphere. It was silent. It had no ID signal, and it was scanning the planet. Jake walked over and saw the screen. Probably just another weather satellite, he said. Nova nodded slowly, but her heart told her something else. That wasn't a satellite. It was looking for her. That night, she couldn't sleep. She stepped outside the cabin and stared up at the stars. The sky was clear, but she felt the weight of something watching, something old, something familiar. She remembered the hologram again, the woman who called her daughter, the title she had spoken, Princess of Lysera. Nova whispered the name to herself, Lysera. It felt like home, but it also felt like danger. She walked to the shed where Jake kept the alien shard. He had locked it away for safety, but Nova knew where the key was. She held the shard in her hand. It was warm. This time, she didn't wait for the hologram. She closed her eyes. She focused, and something answered. A new vision appeared. Not a message, a memory. She saw herself as a little girl, running through golden halls, laughing. Behind her, the same woman, her mother, a queen. Then the scene changed. A council room, voices shouting. The queen slamming her fist on the table. A man in black armor stood across from her. His voice was cold. She must be hidden. If they find her, the throne dies with her. Then she saw herself being placed into the escape pod. The queen bent down and kissed her forehead. "You are the last hope," she said. "Survive. One day, you will return." The memory faded. Nova opened her eyes. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She understood now. She hadn't crashed by accident. She had been sent away, hidden, protected. She was the last living royal of a fallen world. And now, someone out there knew she was alive. Nova put the shard back in the box and locked it. The next morning, Jake noticed something had changed in her eyes. "Everything all right?" he asked. Nova hesitated, then smiled. "Yeah, just ... Remembering things, Jake handed her a cup of coffee. They sat on the porch together, like they always did. After a few minutes, Nova spoke again. "Jake, ... If you knew I wasn't human, would you still care?" Jake turned to her. His voice was calm. "I knew you weren't human the moment I found you," he said. "Didn't matter then, doesn't matter now." She looked at him, trying not to cry. "You're the only family I have." He put a hand on her shoulder. "And you're the only family I need." Nova smiled, but a storm was building inside her. That night, far above Earth, the black satellite blinked once. A signal was sent, deep in space. An ancient ship opened its eyes. It had waited long enough. The heir of Lysera had been found, and it was coming for her. Nova couldn't sleep. The vision from the shard still burned in her mind. The face of the queen, the fire in the skies, the man in black armor. She sat by the window in the dark, staring at the stars. They used to feel beautiful. Now they felt heavy, like a secret waiting to be revealed. Something was out there, watching, waiting. She could feel it. The next morning, Ridgewood woke up to silence. Phones stopped working. The internet went out. Even the radio played nothing but static. At first, people thought it was just a power issue. But Jake knew better. He had lived through enough war zones to know. When things didn't feel right, he walked outside and looked up. The sky looked normal, but his instincts told him otherwise. Nova stepped outside and stood beside him. "It's here," she said softly. Jake looked at her. "What is—" She hesitated. "The one who destroyed my world." He didn't ask how she knew. He just nodded. "What do we do?" Nova took a breath. "I need to find out what it wants, if it's looking for me. I have to face it." Jake placed a hand on her shoulder. "You're not doing this alone." Later that afternoon, they drove to a hill outside town. It was the highest point in Ridgewood. Nova held the shard in her hand. Its glow had changed. It pulsed faster. It was responding to something nearby. Nova stepped away from the truck and raised her arm toward the sky. She closed her eyes. She focused. The shard hummed. Then the clouds parted. A beam of pale blue light shot down from the sky, silent, controlled. It struck the ground in front of her and formed something. A small silver sphere hovered in the air, smooth and quiet. Nova stepped toward it. The sphere opened with a soft click. Inside was a hologram. Not her mother this time. It was him, the man in black armor, the same one from her memories. His voice echoed in a deep, calm tone. "Nova of Lysera, you are found." Jake stepped forward. "Who are you?" The figure turned slightly as if it could see him. "I am Commander Varek, Regent of the Fallen Empire. I come for the last heir." Nova stood tall. "Why now?" Varek's image flickered slightly. "Because your beacon has been activated. Your blood calls to the throne. The enemies of your house are moving. If you remain on Earth, they will come." Jake stepped between them. "She's not going anywhere with you." Varek looked at him with cold eyes. "This world is not yours to defend." Jake didn't blink. "It is now." The hologram vanished. The sphere closed and dropped to the ground. Lifeless Nova picked it up. She was shaking. Jake turned to her. "You all right?" She nodded, but her voice was distant. "He's the one who betrayed my mother. He took the throne after she fell." Jake sighed. "Well, now he wants you to. Probably to make sure you never claim it." Nova looked up at the sky. "I don't want a throne." Jake looked at her. "Maybe not. But you're the only one who can stop him." That night, Nova sat alone in the living room. Jake was asleep in the next room. The fire crackled quietly. She stared into the flames. All this time, she had tried to forget the past. She had tried to be human, to live a quiet life. But she was more than just a lost girl. She was a symbol, a key, and the last hope of a fallen world. The next morning, she packed a bag. Jake stood in the doorway, watching her. You leaving? She shook her head. I'm going to finish what they started. He nodded slowly. I figured you would. Nova turned to him. I need help. Jake smiled. You'll have it. They drove out of Ridgewood, through empty highways and long-forgotten roads. Jake made a few calls. People he once trusted, soldiers, engineers, old friends, quiet men with loud skills. They met in an abandoned warehouse. When Nova walked in, every head turned. A girl with glowing eyes, pale skin, and the quiet strength of someone who had lost everything. She stepped onto the platform. My name is Nova. I'm not from Earth. I'm not here to harm you. But I am being hunted. And they are coming. If they reach this planet, they won't stop at me. They'll take everything. The room stayed silent. Then an old man in the back stood up. Well then, guess we better stop them. People nodded, quietly, without questions. Sci-Fi wasn't just about strength. It was about unity, about standing for each other. Even when the world didn't understand, even when the enemy came from stars. Nova looked at Jake. You sure about this? Jake smiled. You're one of us now. We fight for our own. Later that night, Nova stood on the roof. She looked up at the stars again, but this time she wasn't afraid. She knew what was coming, and she was ready. Far above Earth, a ship moved into low orbit. Its hull was black, its engines silent. Inside, Commander Varric stared at a screen showing Nova's face. The princess remembers. He said she will come to us. His officer replied. Varric shook his head. No, she's human now. That makes her dangerous. The ship descended lower. The war for Lycera was about to begin, and it would start on Earth. It started with one ship, then two more, followed by the time the sun rose over Ridgewood. There were 5 enemy vessels floating silently above Earth's skies. Their black holes blocked the stars. No words, no warnings, no mercy. Commander Varric had come for the last princess, and he had brought an army. But Earth was not the same as Lycera, and Nova was not the same girl he had once sent into exile. She was different now. She had a family, a home, and she was human where it mattered most. Nova stood in the middle of an old hangar deep in the woods. Jake and the team had turned it into a war room. Maps, screens, drones, radios, everything pulled together in 2 days. It wasn't much, but it was enough to start. We can't take on spaceships, said Marcus, one of Jake's old army friends. But we can slow them down. Ground assault, disruption, old-school tactics. Nova stepped forward. There. Not here to destroy Earth. Not yet. Varric wants me alive. That gives us time. Jake nodded. Then let's use it. They sent out the call. Not to governments, not to officials, but to people. Veterans, mechanics, tech geeks, farmers, miners, civilians who had seen too much and survived anyway. Within hours, trucks rolled into Ridgewood. Old friends, new faces, no uniforms. Just grit and loyalty. They weren't fighting for a flag. They were fighting for a girl who had once crashed into their world and chose to stay. They were fighting for one of their own. Nova stood before them. I'm not asking you to die for me, she said. But if we don't stand now, they won't stop with me. They'll come for Earth. For everything. An old woman, nearly 70, stepped forward holding a shotgun. Your family now, child, she said. And we take care of our family. Cheers, echoed through the hangar. That night, the sky pulsed red. The first drop pods fell from orbit. Black steel, burning with heat. They hit the ground like thunder. Varric had deployed his hunters. Tall, armored creatures with glowing eyes, silent, fast, programmed to find Nova. They moved through the woods, like shadows, but they were not alone. Booby traps triggered. Explosions lit the trees. Tripwires launched spikes. Smoke covered the land. Humans fought from the dark. Old men with rifles. Teenagers with drones. Mothers with homemade explosives. Farmers with shotguns and courage. For every hunter that advanced, 5 humans stood in its way. And Nova. She led from the front. She moved like wind, fast, focused. Her training came back, not just Earth's tactics, but Lyceran instincts. She used her energy to create force pulses, shields, light bursts. They were small powers, but they mattered. Jake fought beside her, his movements sharp, precise, decades of training returning with each breath. "You good?" he shouted over the chaos. Nova nodded, eyes glowing. "I'm ready." Another wave of drop pods crashed near the town center. Nova turned to Marcus. "Fall back. Set the traps." Marcus nodded and called out to his team. Explosives were set under the roads. Cars blocked the main street. Civilians were moved underground. Nova stood in the open, knowing they would come for her. And they did. 2 hunters charged forward, fast, blades drawn. Nova raised her hands. A pulse of energy burst from her chest, throwing them back into a wall of fire. Behind her, Jake and the others took out the remaining units. It wasn't just a fight. It was survival. It was family. It was humanity, saying no at dawn. Varric's ship lowered into the sky. A voice boomed across the land. "Nova of Lycer, your resistance is meaningless. Come forward, or your people will suffer." Nova stepped out into the clearing, covered in dirt and bruises. "I'm not yours to take," she shouted. "You were never theirs," Varric replied. "You belong to the stars." Nova shook her head. "No, I belong here." Suddenly, the shard around her neck glowed bright. It pulsed once. Then, in the far corner of the sky, another ship appeared, smaller, sleeker, with silver markings. Nova gasped. "It's one of ours, loyalists." The ship sent out a beacon. It was Lestor and her people had heard her signal. They had come. Varric's face twisted in rage. "You called them?" Nova raised her chin. "I remembered who I am. And now, they remember too." The loyalist ship opened fire. Blue beams cut through the clouds. Varric's fleet scrambled. The humans cheered. Some cried. Others dropped to their knees in relief. Nova turned to Jake. "We're not done yet," she said. "No," Jake replied. "But we just got our first win." As the enemy ships retreated, one final hunter charged from the trees, fast, desperate. It went straight for Nova. Jake stepped in its path, fought hard, but it threw him aside. Nova screamed. Her eyes burst with white light. The symbol on her chest glowed. She raised both hands and released a wave of pure energy. The hunter exploded mid-air. Silence followed. Jake coughed, sitting up slowly. "You okay?" she asked, rushing to him. He grinned through the pain. "I've been worse." She hugged him tight. "You almost died." He looked at her. "You're worth it." The sun broke through the clouds. Varric's fleet vanished into the sky. But the war was not over. Nova looked up, face calm. "They'll come again." Jake nodded. "Then we'll be ready." The battlefield was quiet now. Smoke drifted gently over the hills. The fires had been put out. The hunters were gone. And the sky, once filled with enemy ships, now held the warm colors of a fading sunrise. But for Nova, something had just begun. She stood at the edge of the hill, her hair waving in the breeze, her silver skin glowing softly in the morning light. The symbol on her chest no longer flickered in fear. It pulsed steady, strong, like a heartbeat. She closed her eyes and listened. There was no sound, only something deep. Inside. Power, memories, truth. She had always been more than a girl lost in the woods. She had always been more than a runaway. She was a daughter of a queen, the last voice of a fallen world, and now she was something else. She was Lysera, and she was Earth. Behind her, Jake walked up slowly. "You okay?" he asked. Nova opened her eyes. "I feel different," she said softly. Jake nodded. "You should. You've changed." Nova turned to face him. "I think I always had this inside me. I just never let it out." Jake gave her a proud smile. "You let it out when it mattered most." Down in the camp, people were resting. Some were tending to the wounded. Others were rebuilding. But there was a new energy in the air. Not fear, not grief. Hope. Nova walked back to the hangar. People nodded as she passed. They looked at her with respect now, not just as someone to protect, but as someone who had protected them. She had fought. She had led, and she had won. Inside, the Loyalist ship had landed. Its sleek silver hull shimmered in the light. A group of Lyceron survivors stepped out. Their eyes widened when they saw her. They knelt. Nova froze. "You don't have to do that," she sighed. A woman stepped forward, dressed in silver robes, older, wise. "My princess," she said, voice shaking. "We've searched for you for so long." Nova looked at her. "I'm not ready for this," she whispered. The woman smiled gently. "You already are." Nova glanced at Jake, standing in the doorway. He gave her a small nod. She turned back to the woman. "I need time. I need to finish what Varek started. He's still out there." The woman bowed again. "Then we will follow your lead." Later that evening, Nova sat near a fire. She held a small piece of metal in her hand. It was from one of the hunters. She stared at it quietly. Someone sat beside her. It was Luke. He was one of the youngest from the team, a mechanic, smart, funny, quiet, the kind of guy who never said much but always showed up when needed. He had helped her train, repaired her armor, fixed her equipment without being asked. Now, he just sat beside her, not saying a word. Nova smiled. "You're quiet." Luke looked at her and smiled back. "You've had a big day. Didn't want to crowd your moment." Nova turned toward him. "You've helped me, more than you know." Luke looked down. "I didn't do much." Nova touched his arm gently. "You believed in me." He met her eyes. "Of course I did. You." There was a pause. The fire crackled softly. Nova leaned in just a little. "You're different from the others," she said. Luke smiled nervously. "How so?" "You're not afraid of me." Luke looked at her with calm eyes. "You're not someone to be afraid of." Nova blinked slowly. "I'm an alien, a princess. I glow in the dark." Luke laughed softly. "And still, I'd rather talk to you than anyone else." Nova's voice dropped to a whisper. "Would you have said that before the battle?" Luke looked serious now. "I knew who you were the moment you saved that kid in the supply tent. That wasn't royalty. That was you." Nova stared at him for a long moment. "Do you think this, whatever this is real?" Luke's smile softened. "I think if it feels real to you, it's real enough." Nova leaned her head on his shoulder. For a moment, there were no titles, no wars, no stars, just two people under the sky. Later that night, Jake found Nova standing alone near the trees. "Luke," we asked. Raising an eyebrow, Nova laughed gently. "Don't start." Jake smiled. "I'm just saying, he seems like a good one." Nova looked up at the sky again. "Jake, what if I have to leave?" Jake's face grew quiet. "I knew this day would come." Nova turned to him. "I don't want to go. But if I stay, Earth may always be in danger." Jake placed a hand on her shoulder. "You have to do what's right. For everyone. That's what your mother would have wanted." Nova's eyes filled with tears. "I'm scared." Jake didn't say anything. He just pulled her into a hug. "You're not that little girl I found in the forest anymore. You're stronger now, braver, and you're never alone." As the moon rose high, Nova stood taller Tomorrow, she would speak to the world. Not as a lost girl, not just as a survivor, but as a leader, a daughter of Earth and Lysera. The princess had awakened, and now, she was ready to rise. A week passed. The world had changed. The battle in Ridgewood had gone quiet, but its echo traveled across the planet. News had spread. People saw the ships, the fire, the lights in the sky. Governments tried to explain it. Most failed, but in a quiet town, far from cameras and headlines, a girl who once fell from the stars stood ready to rise. Nova stood before the mirror inside Jake's cabin. She wore a robe woven from silver threads brought by the Loyalist ship. On her chest, the royal symbol glowed with steady light. She didn't need a crown. The strength in her eyes said everything. She took a deep breath. Today, she wasn't hiding anymore. Today, she would face the world. Down in the hangar, people gathered, not just the fighters, not just her team, but families, journalists, scientists, soldiers, even a few world leaders. They had flown in after seeing the footage. They didn't come with weapons. They came with questions. Nova stepped onto the platform. She looked out at the crowd. Her voice was calm, clear. My name is Nova. I was born on a planet called Lysera. I was sent away when it fell. For years I lived among you. I learned your language, your culture, your kindness, and I want you to know this. She paused. You saved me, not just from death, but from fear, from being alone. She took another breath. Now, I carry two names. I am Princess Nova of Lysera, but I am also Nova Miller, daughter of Earth. The crowd was silent. Then someone clapped, then another, and then the entire room stood and applauded. Nova smiled, her heart full. Later, she sat with Jake on the porch of the cabin. The forest was still. The stars blinked above them. They want me to go, she said. Softly Jake nodded. I figured they would. They want me to return, help rebuild Lysera, lead the survivors, reclaim our world. Jake didn't speak right. Away. Are you going? Nova stared ahead. I have to, but not forever. Jake looked at her. You sure? Nova turned toward him. I'm not just going as a princess. I'm going as someone who knows what love looks like, what home feels like. Jake chuckled. Sounds like you've been rehearsing that. Nova laughed. Maybe a little. He looked at her, eyes warm. I'm proud of you. You know that. She leaned her head on his shoulder. I know. The next morning, the Loyalist ship prepared for launch. It stood tall in the clearing, humming, with soft blue light. People gathered to say goodbye. Luke stood near the ramp, his hands in his pockets. He looked nervous, like he had something to say, but wasn't sure how. Nova walked up to him. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. So, ... This is it, he asked. For now, Nova said gently. You're really going to another planet? She nodded. Double quotes, there are people there who need me. And what about people here? Nova stepped closer. I'll be back, I promise. Luke looked down. You don't have to promise. Nova reached up and took his hand. I want to. He looked at her, eyes full of something soft and aching. I'm going to miss you. I'll miss you too. She leaned in and kissed him. Not fast, not rushed, just real. When she pulled away, she smiled. Wait for me. Luke grinned. I already am. Nova walked up the ramp. Before entering the ship, she turned back one last time. Jake stood beside Bear, the old dog now gray around the eyes. Nova raised her hand. Jake raised his. Then the ship lifted off, not with noise, with grace. With light, with hope. From the sky, Nova looked down at Earth. She remembered every moment. The cabin, the laughter, the pain, the healing, the love. She wasn't running away. She was going forward, to build something new. A bridge between worlds, far above. The ship entered orbit. The stars welcomed her home. Inside the ship, the crew waited. They bowed as she entered. Nova shook her head. No. Bowing. We're equals now. The lead officer nodded. As you wish, my queen. Nova sat at the helm. I want to send a message to Earth. The comms officer turned toward her. Message ready. Nova spoke, her voice steady. To the people of Earth, you were never just a stop on my journey. You were the reason I survived. And now, I carry you with me, wherever I go. She paused. I may be Lissaran by blood, but I am human by heart. She smiled softly. This isn't goodbye. This is a new beginning, for both our worlds. The message was sent. The ship turned toward the stars. And Nova, once a lost child from a shattered world, now flew as a queen, a leader, a daughter, not just of one world, but of two. From the ashes of war, a new queen rose. Not because she was born to rule, but because she chose to love. Humanity didn't just find an alien, it found a hero. And Lysera didn't just get a ruler, it got a daughter, raised by Earth.